back. Road Rants on Star Wars. We're going to skip the fluff today. This is going to be a longer video. Put your seatbelt on for this one. Wow. All right, let's do it. This is from Bob Iger's book that is dropping called something, let's look. The Ride of a Lifetime, Lessons Learned from 15 Years as CEO of Walt Disney. This looks terrible. Bob Iger on George Lucas. On George sending his outlines for the sequel trilogy. At some point in the process, George told me that he had completed outlines for 3 movies. He agreed to send us 3 copies of the outlines, one for me, one for Alan Braverman, one for Alan Horn, who had just been hired to run our studio. Alan Horn and I read George's outlines, and we decided to buy them, though we made clear in the purchase agreement we would not be contractually obligated to adhere to the plot lines he laid out. Okay, guys. This is the part that's got me pissed. You're not going to believe this shit. On George's new role of creative authority, he knew that I was going to stand firm on the question of creative control, but it wasn't an easy thing for him to accept. And so he reluctantly agreed to be available to consult with us at our request. I promised that we would be open to his ideas. In parentheses, this was not a hard promise to make. Of course, we're open to George Lucas's ideas. But like the outlines, we were under no obligation. Okay. We'll come back to that in a second, but I want to reiterate what he just said. If you listen to the wording, George wanted to have creative authority over at least the sequel trilogy. George Lucas wanted creative authority. Bob Iger denied it. What the fuck? Let's keep going. I'm trying to be cool right now. On revealing to George they weren't following his plot lines. Okay, and I think we've heard most of this before, but early on, Kathy brought JJ and Michael Arndt up to North California to meet with George at his ranch and talk about their ideas for the film. George immediately got upset as they began to describe the plot, and it dawned on him we weren't using one of the stories he submitted during negotiations. The truth was, Kathy, JJ, Alan, and I discussed the direction in which the saga should go, and we all agreed it wasn't what George had outlined. George knew we weren't contractually bound to anything, but he thought that our buying the story treatments was a tactic promise that we'd follow them, and he was disappointed that his story was being discarded. I'd been so careful since our first conversation not to mislead him in any way. I didn't think I had now, but I could have handled it better. I should have prepared him for the meeting with JJ and Michael and told him about our conversations. That felt it was better to go in another direction. I could have talked through this with him and avoided angering him by not surprising him. Now, in our first meeting with him about the future of Star Wars, George felt betrayed. While this whole process would have never been easy for him, we had gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start. So they blindsided George. with the fact that they were not going to use his treatment for the sequel trilogy. That's some rat fucking bastards, if you ask me. I am more disappointed in Disney. You are seeing the Rhodes Rant's face of disappointment. This makes me sad as fuck, and it makes me mad. Let's go back to the most damning thing that fucked this whole thing up. Once again, George's new role of creative authority. He knew that I was going to stand firm on the question of creative control, but it wasn't an easy thing for him to accept. George Lucas wanted creative authority over this whole thing. Bob Iger denied it. Bob Iger, you're the fucking devil. Bob Iger, guess what? Breaking news. Kathleen Kennedy didn't ruin Star Wars. You did. We were all wrong. You ruined Star Wars. George Lucas wanted creative control over Star Wars. He wanted it. And you denied the creator of Star Wars. All this time, everybody thought, okay, they just bought the product. He's a consultant, blah, blah, blah. We thought George didn't want it. Now we know he did. This changes so much. Bob Iger ruined Star Wars. That's the breaking news. Bob Iger. I'm sweating like a bitch because I got this fucking light going. Bob Iger ruined Star Wars. Aaron C., my boy, you linked me up with, in my opinion, the biggest fucking news that has broke since all of this has ever happened. George Lucas wanted creative control and Bob Iger denied it. Straight from Bob Iger's book. I think Bob Iger understands what this did to him. Because I'm just Rhodes Rants. Wait till everybody else gets a hold of this. All of this shit could have been avoided. Because Bob Iger, you run the fucking show. You can tell Kathleen Kennedy to go set her fucking ass down and get out of the way. George Lucas wanted to stay involved. Creative authority. He wanted to be over all of it. And Bob Iger denied it. I have made over 500 videos. And in 500 videos, I have never shown my head. Now, to be honest with you, I've got a full head of hair. I just shaved my head 2 days ago. For the first time in shaved it like this for the first time in over a decade. But I had to take my cap off because I get mad, my head gets hot. And this should be the narrative going forward. Bob Iger today ruined Star Wars. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.